Presentation and Discussion Club. My name is Michael Sutton. You all already know that because you're my friends. And it is my honor, it is my privilege, and my pleasure to be the first one speaking at this club. I'm very happy that all of you were able to show up. I know 10 a.m. It's a bit early for some people, not early for me, as you know. But thank you all for coming, and we'll definitely be having this meeting every Sunday at this time in this room. So in this presentation, I'm going to talk a little bit about the club, about how it started, about the structure of the club and the structure of the presentations, and I'll also be talking about the importance of public speaking, and it's because of automation that's going to happen in the future that public speaking will become more and more relevant in our daily lives. So, first of all, how did this club get started? So at this moment, I would like the officers of the club to introduce themselves. Name, year, major, position.
I'm Matt, bioengineering sophomore, and I was Michael's roommate last year.
I'm Ben. I am sophomore and studying molecular biology. I'm the vice president.
Okay, thank you. And this is not how the club started. So what actually happened was over the summer, I had this idea of starting a club. I had the idea of starting a club where guys were able to hang out, practice public speaking, and just build confidence in that way. And even if someone didn't want to speak publicly, at the very least they'd be able to learn some relevant information, and just to hang out with some friends, meet some new people. And this was my dream. Very happy that it has come to fruition. It did take a while for this club to get approved. Matt, Ben, and I, we were working on it all last semester, drafting the Constitution, submitting the application, and it actually took until this semester for the club to get approved by the SORC. Hey, Dan.
Oh.
So, the SORC, they did take a long time. This was not the only new club application that they got. We were just one of many. But nonetheless, it has been approved, so very happy about that. So what is this club going to look like in the near future? Well, we are going to be meeting in this room, 242 Cathy, at 10 to 11 a.m. every Sunday. That is what I have the reservation for. Now, there are going to be some exceptions in there, like Sunday before finals week, we're not going to meet. Sunday before spring break, I'll be home. Matt, I know you'll be home. And the majority of you will probably not be here. So we also will probably not have a meeting then, but most Sundays we will, unless I tell you otherwise. So for presentations, I want you all to start thinking about, if you do want to present, what topic you would like to do, and just let me know. Outreach, the turnout today was slightly underwhelming, so I really want this to become a major club at Pitt, something that a lot of people know about, something that anyone can go to practice their public speaking, and just meet some new people. So flyering, as I said before, at best it barely works, and at worst flyering doesn't work. The most effective way for this club to grow is to truly spread the word to your friends and anyone who is just interested in public speaking. So we are also going to do a YouTube account with all presentations. Matt, I would like you to set that up in the near future. You do not have to be on YouTube, and likewise, you do not have to be recorded. That is something that we will only do with your consent. But who knows? Maybe you'll be the next viral sensation on YouTube if you do consent to do that. But most presentations should be on YouTube. In the distant future, what is our plan? So, we are going to have some sort of incentive system for presentations. So it could just be something as simple as if you do X or more presentations, you'll be rewarded with some sort of title, like verified public speaker or something, I know it's Niccolo Machiavelli who once said, it is men that honor titles, not the other way around. But regardless, you will have this title to put on your resume if you do speak publicly a certain number of times. And again, we are looking for opportunities outside weekly meetings. So one of the things that I really want to look into is sending people to high schools, sending people to middle schools, There are all sorts of topics that would be relevant to high schoolers and middle schoolers, whether it's going into a health class and talking about whatever health-related topic, or just talking about, this is my major, and this is why you should study it at university. Or if you don't get into university, here are some other alternatives for you. So there are all sorts of relevant topics that we could do at schools, and we would be able to get volunteer hours for it. So funding, we do not have funding right now, and in order to get funding, we would have to do something to justify it, right? And probably what we would have to do to justify it is this, right? Showing that we are of a benefit to the community. I am hopeful that in the future we will have funding, if not for the sheer fact that we have a Jew as our business manager. He will get us the money, and who knows, maybe this club will be the next viral sensation, or one of you too could be the next viral sensation if you have an especially spectacular presentation. So presentation scheduling, me and the other officers, we have to approve the topic of presentation as well as the overall style. So obviously I'm doing it on PowerPoint, but just the overall structure of the presentation, you should know a little bit about that. The estimated presentation time, so within like 5 minutes or so, like do you expect it to take 15 minutes or 20 minutes? Just a rough estimate. That is something we would very much appreciate. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. And it is first come, first serve for spots. So in the future, as early as next week, people can start to present, and it is better if you sign up earlier so that you have a better chance to present whenever you want to. Guidelines. So first of all, the time. I know this is a very wide window, 10 and 30 minutes. It can be anywhere within there, or if you go under or over a little bit, it's not a huge deal, but that's what you should be aiming for. Now, the idea is, if you have a presentation that you've worked really hard with, you're very knowledgeable about the topic, very enthusiastic about it, and you know it'll take a long time, you think it'll take half an hour, then that's fine. That'd just be the only presentation we would have on that day. On the other hand, if there are two people who are giving like 10-minute or 15-minute presentations, we'll be able to fit like 2 of them in, or maybe even 3 of them in one meeting. They do not require a visual aid, so if you think your presentation will be better without one, you are free to do it. PowerPoint, in terms of a visual aid, that's probably going to be the most common thing. I use PowerPoint for this. I think it's boring, but I know how to use it. There are all sorts of these alternative mediums for presenting though, and I would encourage all of you to look into those. And we might find something that is significantly better than PowerPoint, because everyone is just so bored with PowerPoint nowadays, but I feel like no one has anything better. So I think we should look into that. If you want to include videos in your presentation, that is okay, but they shouldn't be too long. They should just be a couple minutes long. The idea, again, is for us to practice public speaking. If you want to be recorded, you have that option, as I'm being recorded now. If you want it to go on YouTube, you have that option. And another thing is, if you want to be evaluated, so this is something that I would do, or maybe one of the other officers would do, watch your presentation live, or watch the recording and just give you some tips, some advice, what you did well, what you didn't do well, how good was your eye contact, how good was your body language, did you speak too quickly or too slowly, or things like that. You have that option as well. In terms of citing sources, I technically cannot make you guys cite sources. I think you should, because that's good practice. I don't think you should have to cite sources formally. I know there's like a very exact cookie-cutter way to cite sources, whether it's an MLA or APA. I always thought it was completely ridiculous. Like, last name, first name, period. Like, title. And there's like someone holding you at gunpoint, like, no. Put the website title in italics. And you have no choice. I hate the system. I think I made the point. But websites, you do not need to cite them in that format. We do ask for more than just the URL though, because the URLs, they go wonky. Sometimes they don't work. they don't lead to anything anymore, or they don't lead to the right page. So just add a little bit more. So if the article title isn't present in the URL, add that. The author is probably not going to be present, so add that, or maybe the date when it was published. If something's common knowledge, don't have to cite sources. So if you're citing, or if you're saying that water is 2 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of oxygen, yeah, you don't have to cite sources for that. In terms of Wikipedia, some people think that Wikipedia is not a credible source. These people are wrong. Wikipedia, in my experience, is a very credible source. They are not wrong about very much, because ultimately any source can be wrong. Like, it doesn't matter whether it's the Encyclopedia Britannica. There's a possibility that it could be wrong. And in Wikipedia, I have never found very many errors. However, if it is something that's very specific, Wikipedia might not be completely accurate. It might not give the whole picture. So if you scroll down on Wikipedia, you know you can access all the original sources that were used in the Wikipedia article, and that is what I would recommend doing if you're doing something much more specific. But for general topics, yeah, Wikipedia I think would be okay. Just don't go overboard. And because this will go on YouTube, you will be judged unfairly, I might add, if you use Wikipedia. So, but you know, that's life. Next one I think is pretty obvious. Be ethical. Don't present incorrect information that you know is incorrect, because you will be found out and you will be exterminated. So no, I'm just kidding. But just be ethical. Follow the guidelines of conduct. Now, your presentation does not have to cite sources if none were used. So what sort of presentation would not have any sources? If you're telling like a personal story, if you're recounting a personal experience, something that happened to you, and said, oh, this was amazing, or this was terrible, this was a terrible experience, and this is what I learned from it, and this is what you all should learn from it. Yeah, you wouldn't have to cite sources, and that is a style of presentation that we can do as well. But in general, the message that I just want to convey is that we are open to many possibilities. We are open to creativity, because there's so many ways to do a presentation, so many interesting ways to do a presentation. If you want to do audience participation, we can do that. If you want to do coordinated presentations with someone else, maybe on the same day, like you two are doing a topic that, or 2 topics that are related or very similar, or even dueling topics, right? That would be really fun. Formal debate, we could set that up if we have the people who wanted to do it. If you want to bring something in for a demonstration, that is also a possibility. So we are really open to doing all sorts of creative styles of presentation, but just run it by us first. We'll probably say yes, but unless it's something super outlandish. Presentation topics. So this is maybe the most important part of the whole presentation today. The most important principle for these topics is that it must provide practical information for how we live our lives. By the end of the presentation, when we walk out that door, we need to potentially live our lives differently as a result of learning that information. So you all know I am a political nut. I know a lot about politics. Let's say I was to do a presentation on the Electoral College, and I talked about what it is, whether we should get rid of it. I'm sure it would be interesting, but is anyone going to live their lives differently just because now they know what the Electoral College is and they have an opinion on whether we should get rid of it? Unless you're like a US Senator, no, you're not going to live your lives any differently. So with your presentation, you should provide some sort of justification, some sort of reasoning for how we could live our lives differently as a result of learning this information. And again, this could be very flexible. So for example, if you're just telling a personal story, say this is the lesson that I learned, that would count. That would count. Also, I do not want controversiality to limit us in any way. Is that even a word, controversiality? I don't even know, I just made up a word. There are topics that are controversial, but ultimately they are topics that need to be talked about. I personally don't understand the point of having an opinion on a controversial topic, on a controversial issue, if you're not allowed to discuss it. Like, it's crazy. So this club, this university, it is a free speech area. We are not going to attack each other if we have opposing beliefs, no matter how controversial the issue is. So we are not going to let that limit us. Again, it can be a personal story or experience, as I said before. Also, this is an interesting one. You do not have to be impartial when you give your presentation. So for example, let's say that I lose my mind and I give a presentation on why I don't believe in man-made global warming. And I would say, well, you know, the arguments for man-made global warming, they're so mainstream, they're so widely known. I don't have to pay any respect to those. You guys already know those arguments. I just want to present my side. That's okay. You can do that, but just admit that you're not being impartial. So now I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk about automation. So automation is why I believe public speaking will be important, especially in the future. Because ultimately, the future is very unclear. As technology improves at a faster and faster rate, the future, the near future, becomes more and more clouded. So, but the one thing that we can do right now that robots will never be able to do, at least not for the foreseeable future, is speak eloquently, as I am doing now. We will always be able to beat robots when it comes to the soft skills. So there are several scenarios for automation. Some people say automation, oh, you know, it won't have that much of an effect at all. There will be very few people whose jobs are actually displaced because of automation, and the workforce in 2030 will be largely unchanged. Only very few people will be affected. Other people have a much more ambitious scenario that they believe in, where it's a bunch of people, millions and millions of people, tens of millions will be displaced, and we have to do something about it. Now, the average of those scenarios, this is McKinsey Global Institute. They are an international think tank that, I guess, thinks a lot about automation in the workforce. And in the average of scenarios, of all the scenarios analyzed together, they project that 15% of the global workforce will be replaced by 2030, replaced by robots. And so this is from the Telegraph. It's an English newspaper. You can come in. And you can see that out of around 700 occupations, 12 were found to have a 99% chance of being automated in the future. So if you look at these professions, do you notice anything that they have in common? Or perhaps notice anything that they don't have in common? It's very interesting. The one thing that they have in common is that they are all repetitive, right? They all involve repetitive skills. Now, something that you should also notice is it doesn't have anything to do with how much money you make. Like, you would think, oh, you know, I'm not going to be on the lower end of the labor market. This automation does not matter. That's simply not true. Like, look at all of these jobs. I mean, hand sewers, that's a working class job, but a lot of these are typical middle class jobs. Telemarketers, title examiners, tax preparers. And so the amount of money that you make, just because you don't plan on being in the lower end of the labor market, does not mean that you are safe from automation. So I ask you, will you be one of those 15% who gets displaced by automation? And I certainly hope for all of you that you are not part of the 15%. But even if you don't plan on doing one of these jobs, you know, you might think, come on, Michael, what's the big deal? I don't plan on doing any of those things. Robots, they're not going to take over my job. My job is not automatable. I have nothing to worry about. Well, I would like to say to you, in the words of our president, wrong. Not true. Not the case. So this is an amazing graphic that I found. While few occupations are fully automatable, 60% of all occupations will have at least 30% technically automatable activities. So the question for you all is probably not whether your job can be completely automated. The question is, how much of my job can be automated? Out of all of the skills that I have, how many of them can be done by a robot? Out of all of the value that I can provide to my company, to society, how much of that is expendable? How much of that can be automated? And that's the question that we need to ask ourselves. because every job is going to be affected. And check out this graphic. Activities within all occupations will shift. So as I get a drink of water, I want you to take a look at this graphic. I'm so thirsty. Where did I put my water?
What kind of water?
Oh, there it is. What? No, it's just normal water.
Not living water.
So take a look at this. Again, what do you notice? The thing that I notice, look at what's going down. Processing data, collecting data, predictable physical activities. These are hard skills. These are skills that people are trained to do and ultimately can be automated. Now, look at the skills that are going to go up in value, that are going to go up in use. Applying expertise, interacting with stakeholders, managing and developing people, soft skills, right? Now, I think expertise, you could say, well, that's kind of a mixture of hard and soft skills, which is true, but these other two things, definitely soft skills, right? And so this is why, as a result of automation, robots, we don't know how far this is going to go. They could do all sorts of hard skills that we never could have predicted. But in terms of soft skills, humans will always have the upper hand. And that is why I encourage all of you to learn soft skills, because as important as they are today, they're only going to become even more important in the future. So these are two other graphics that I thought were interesting. Some people say that as a result of automation, the world is going to end, right? Like there's going to be millions of people who lose their jobs, they won't be able to find another job, they're just going to sit at home collecting their welfare, doing drugs, and there's not going to be any way forward for them. Well, again, if you look at history, that's simply not true. In 1850, that's about 60%. 60% of Americans were involved in agriculture. That sounds about right. And as the years progressed, what happened to all those farmers? Now it's about 2 or 3%. So what happened? Did they all lose their jobs, starve to death, and die? Because they didn't have welfare back then. They didn't have any sort of public aid back then. No, of course not. They moved to the city. They learned new skills. So it's not like they were, automated out of existence or something like that. They had to learn new skills. And this is something that people whose jobs become automated, that's something that they'll have to do. But it's better just to avoid that entirely, right? This other graphic I also thought was interesting. And take a look at the industries that they're talking about. Are these working class industries with a lot of working class jobs? A lot of them are, again, industries with a lot of middle class workers. Healthcare, aircraft maintenance, automotive design, pharmaceuticals, marketing. So it doesn't have that much to do with how much money you make, with the income that you make and what part you are in the labor market. And also, a lot of people, they have this understanding that the reason why robots are going to take over is because you don't have to pay them, right? You have to buy the robot, you probably need a mechanic to do routine maintenance sometimes, or if the robot breaks, but you don't have to pay them. And so that decrease in cost, that is why businesses are going towards robots. And that's definitely one of the components. But if you look at it in another way, the blue is performance gains that robots have over humans. So it's not just robots, you don't have to pay them, and you have to pay humans. There are actually many cases where there's a gain in performance. The robot can do the job better than the human can. So these are just two graphics that I thought were interesting, and that deserve some thought as well. So what do I have to do next? Oh, yeah, I have to do that. So I would like to appeal to you all and say, don't have expendable skills. Think about where this country is going, about where the earth is going. Think about the trends that are occurring, the skills that are going to be useful in the future, and the skills that are going to be automated out of existence. Think about it and plan ahead for your careers, because I can tell you right now, a lot of people aren't thinking about it, and a lot of people are going to be in difficult situations. One of the things that robots will never be able to do is do what I'm doing right now, speaking publicly, speaking eloquently, speaking to a large group of people. And so, on your job applications, on your resumes, let it be known that you have public experience. And not only will you be able to put this club down as something that you've done, but also be able to refer to them, to give them the hyperlink, give them links to presentations that are on YouTube. Here are some examples of presentations that I've done. This shows that I'm a good public speaker, or you can even say, oh, my first presentation didn't go so well, but as I continue doing them, look how much better I got. And this is something that could potentially help you stand out in this extremely competitive labor market in which we live. And so I believe that's everything that I have to cover. Once again, I'd like to thank you all for coming. Until next time.